This is part 4 of the logo design for Spirited Navigators. I am continuing the process based on the feedback from the latest round, which you can see in video 3. So here I added a more detailed map so that Asia and Africa were more defined. I also reverted to the brighter blue and green colors, which were in the original globe-shaped backpack, which you'll see at the top of the screen right up there. I kind of flip between it while I'm sampling colors. And I'm playing around with adding the pockets, changing the color of the pockets. And then because we decided to take the arrows out of the mark, I have decided to play around with the idea of adding maybe ley lines behind it. And I've kind of aligned those ley lines, that navigational globe, with the pockets. And now I'm playing around with taking the text out of the circular orientation and stacking it underneath the logo. And this is my process. It's very intuitive. I just follow the breadcrumbs and what feels good to do, and try this and then try that. And here I decided, well, what if I added the ley lines on top of the map? And so you'll see I'm playing around with a clipping mask and then reducing the opacity. And then I'm playing around with changing the gray stroke outline around the backpack to white instead of gray. And here I'm just flipping through some fonts. I actually start to have a little bit of trouble with my computer because both Illustrator and my screen recorder with QuickTime take so much of my old computer's power that my computer kind of started hanging and I wasn't able to copy and paste as easily. And so you'll see me resaving my work about 25 times because it kept hanging, and I didn't want to lose any of my work. So here I was playing around with another font. This is House Gothic. House Industries is one of my favorite font foundries, and I've invested in a lot of fonts with them. Here you'll see me playing around with changing the angle of the wings since we no longer have the arrows up top. Just kind of playing around with the size, playing around with the angle, and each time I change the angle on one side, I vertically reflect the other wing so that they do have the same angle. That's something that's really important when building these marks in Illustrator, is the symmetry and making sure that angles match and things are aligned, and using the smart grid so that things do get lined up and aren't kind of super wonky. Here I was playing around with the idea of adding ley lines to the O in Navigators, and I played around with that a lot to see if I could get a little definition, and then I kind of ended up aborting that idea because at smaller sizes, I don't know, it didn't really feel so distinguishable. But what I like to do a lot of times is to echo something in the main mark in the text treatment below, and sometimes that happens when the text and the mark are together, and sometimes I create a separate version of the text that incorporates elements from the mark so that if the text were used separately from the mark, there would still be some of that consistency, that brand consistency. So here I did a lot of work after my computer crapped out and froze multiple times. And so these next logos are the product of my continued work and playing around. And you can see on this first one that I don't have ley lines on the backpack. I have that kind of faded out pocket. I have banners above and below. And I used that kind of navigational globe idea in the background. That was the first way that I played around. And I also changed the wings, the feathers of the wings, back to that brighter blue like the original circular globe backpack that, again, you saw way at the beginning of the video, way at the top of the screen, just a couple times while I was sampling colors. You'll have to excuse our coonhound barking in the background. He's very loud-mouthed today. And in the second one over here, you can see it's very similar. I simply took out the ley lines in the back, or that navigational globe, simplified it a little, and increased the size of the wings so that they connected with the banners, and it made one cohesive mark. So this is back to the beginning a little bit more simplified with the circular text and adding ley lines into the globe, still have a pocket on that backpack, and still have those gray feathers in the wings. And these are also the wings that were not tilted further upward. These were the original wings that that are completely horizontal in the initial orientation. And then the next version of that same logo is where I played around with putting the navigational globe behind it. You kind of have an echo there of the navigation behind the backpack and on the backpack as well. There's a possibility that could be seen as too complicated, but I tested enlarging and reducing the mark, and it was pretty clear. So this is, again, just another version. Since my clients had a few different ideas, I like to test out several different directions and see what happens. So here is the final set, and this idea was kind of making an arch to echo, flying off into the sunset, sunrise, that whole coast to coast, horizon to horizon idea. And then I took that same golden hoop and I echoed it in the text below using two different fonts. I believe it was Gotham Rounded on the left and Gotham Light on the right. And then down below on the right was what I was talking about earlier, where sometimes if I have a mark and the text is going to be used by itself, there will be a treatment where the word mark echoes some of the visual mark. And so on the bottom right is an idea if the mark right above it were split up and the text were used alone, then perhaps we could play around with, having a version where there are the wings so that you have the that mark echoed throughout.